The cloud. All right, welcome everybody. This is the final segment of our Yoga for Mobility. So feel free to check out any of the other videos, come back to them, see how your body changes and responds. Each day it's gonna be a little bit different. So I'm so happy you came here today. Let's make our way to our yoga mat. Grabbing maybe a glass of water, maybe creating your space, making it nice and comfy. And just coming to whatever seat of rest or posture of rest, whatever that looks like for you, whether that's seated, whether that's laying down. We will come down onto our stomach for our first posture. So if you want to start there, then feel free. So just a reminder, my name is Coco and I am a 500-hour yoga teacher. I teach at Divine Power Yoga and Massage in South Lyon, and I teach at Brighton Yoga Center in downtown Brighton. I'm so happy that we could do this series, and hopefully if you all like it, just let us know and maybe we can put out something else in the future. All right, so coming down into our space, and wherever you're at, starting to create length in the spine. So if you're seated, start to find the sit bones in the ground, and instead of hunching forward or leaning far back, start to sit up nice and erect, drawing the crown of the head up, letting the tailbone root down. If you're on your stomach or your back, just creating the length in the spine here by extending the legs out, bringing the hands to wherever is comfy. So before we get into this class, our class is just going to be focusing on a few things today. So today we're just going to get a little introspective to start our class. And time spent introspectively can be really positive, right? It's great for insight, for our growth, for creativity and processing. Yet sometimes getting in our head can be a little challenging because we start to take a negative mindset and then we start turning against ourselves, right? There's a difference between introspection and rumination. Self-reflection and examination helps us explore and look at our mind, whereas rumination leads us into a spiral negative thinking cycle. And at first it can be hard to differentiate between just introspective passively and the voices in our head, right? There's that inner critic that always tends to show up. It has a penchant for slipping into our thoughts without us even realizing. So maybe even as you're sitting here, you're thinking you don't have time for this, or you won't be good at it, or you can't even relax. However, as we practice in yoga and in life, as we practice mindfulness, we gain the power of familiarizing ourselves with our thoughts and our thought patterns. So we get to know our critical inner voices, and we can start to recognize when these voices show up and when they start to surface. And this is a practice that I want us to get into today. Steering our minds away from these thoughts, away from the voice of the inner critic. We can see thoughts kind of as clouds in the sky. You have the big, beautiful blue sky, and you have all these little fluffy clouds. We can see the clouds like our thoughts just passing by, and instead of trying to manipulate them or touch them, because we can't really, the clouds are just going to pass on by, and focus on the bright blue sky behind it. So as we go through our class today, I'm inviting you to focus on this idea of beginning to look inside and notice your thoughts. Notice the inner critic, and notice every time you start to hear that voice pop up, because you will, just gently ask it to come back by taking a breath and coming back into our body. Beautiful. All right, so now that I talked about what we want to get into our class, let's get into a little bit of movement here. So we're going to start on our stomach. So coming all the way down onto our stomach, nice and slow. We're going to bring our hands underneath our face here, creating a little pillow, bringing our elbows out to the side here, and gently setting our forehead down onto our little pillow. Picking up the legs and extending them a little bit further away from the body. Feeling the points of contact on the earth here, our elbows, our ribs, our pelvis, the tops of our feet. And we're gonna get into a little breathing here. It's called crocodile breathing. So a lot of times our breath is really shallow. It's in the shoulders and in the chest. So notice your breath here and just take a big breath in. And notice if you kind of feel your body moving. We're gonna get immediate feedback here in this position in our brain here. So resting on the hands, taking a big breath in, and notice if you can feel your body move, right? Notice if you feel any movement here. And if you don't, that's okay. But what we're looking for is the ability to start to use the correct diaphragm muscles so we can feel our body move and our position change. So taking a nice big breath in, somebody's trying to get in here. Taking a nice deep breath in on your stomach, feeling the ribs come up towards the ceiling, feeling your movement here, and exhale out slowly through the mouth. So just taking these nice big breaths in through the nose if it's available, bringing the breath down into the diaphragm, into the belly, feeling the shoulders kind of lift up. And then as you exhale out through the mouth, slowly sinking back into the mat. Let's do that 3 more times. Inhale, pause at the top of it, feel the belly expand underneath you. And exhale, slowly sink back into the mat. Nice, 2 more times. Inhale, pause, exhale. 1 more time. Inhale, pause, exhale. So if we're using the correct diaphragm muscles, we'll feel our body move and our position change ever so slightly. So if you need to take a few more breaths here, then do so. Nice. All right, now we're just gonna get into tiny little movement into our hips. So keeping our forehead down on our little pillow that we created with our hands. We're just gonna start to rock our hips to the right, then to the left. Nothing fancy, just rocking the hips to the right and the left. Maybe you can't really see it because I'm wearing black pants on a black mat. We're just rocking our hips back and forth. So we're just rocking the hips back and forth so that we can start to release any stored trauma in our body. Yeah, they say our issues live in our tissues. So we're just slowly rocking the hips from right to left. This is a great little thing to do in your bed when you first wake up. You can be on your stomach or on your back, but this rocking motion activates your parasympathetic nervous system, and it naturally brings you into a state of rest and ease. So out of your flight or fight kind of system and into one that's more relaxing and the state of healing. So we're going to keep rocking the hips back and forth, side to side, nothing fancy, for 10 more seconds. Yeah, just rocking for 3, 4, 2, 4, 1. All right, I'm just gonna change my position so that you all can see me, but I want you to stay on your stomach and where you're at. All right, here's my trusty yoga assistant Carver. All right, so we're gonna come into a little cobra pose. So we're gonna bring our right hand off the right side of the mat and our left hand off the left side of the mat. On our next inhale, we're gonna start to lift our chin and our chest up off the mat. And then just start to hold here, drawing the back of the skull towards the back of the room, lifting through the chest. All right, tenting up onto the fingertips here. We're just gonna drop the right shoulder down towards the mat, take a peek over our left elbow, inhale back up through center. And over to the left, dropping that left shoulder down, peeking over that right elbow, and back up. 1 more time each side, just starting to get into our neck and our shoulders. Nice. Beautiful. Then we'll bring our arms parallel to one another at the top of the mat here. So spreading out through the fingertips, bringing the elbows underneath the shoulders here, and feeling the forearms push into the earth. Feeling the pelvis and the tops of the feet down onto the ground here and coming into a Sphinx pose. So starting with our gaze here, bringing our gaze between our hands. Starting to root the crown of our head to where our wall and our ceiling meet. So creating like this long line with our neck. Starting to gently, ever so gently, pull the ribs up off the earth. Big breath in here. And exhale out slowly through the mouth. Nice. We're going to start to move our gaze towards the front of the room here. Yeah, starting to open up through the throat. Maybe it feels good to swallow here. Maybe it feels good to take a little Mona Lisa smile, you know, a slight edge of the corners of your mouth turning up here. We'll find 2 more big breaths here. Feeling the ribs and the belly move, kind of like we did at the beginning of class in our crocodile breath. Getting that instant feedback. Nice. 1 more big breath. And we're gonna gently push into our hands, come up onto our knees, and make our way back into a child's pose. So I'm gonna turn my orientation on my mat once more, bringing the toes to touch and the knees out as wide as you like, and sinking the hips down towards the bum, walking the hands out in front of you. Taking a few breaths here just to find the length in the spine. Yeah. Walking, sinking the hips down and back, and noticing here where we feel sensation. Noticing if the knees are tight, if the hips are tight, if the ankles are tight. Noticing if the shoulders are tight, if the chest is tight. Just letting this conversation with the body start to happen. And practicing this idea of noticing when the inner critic starts to come up. And instead of thinking, oh, I can't do this, I'm not flexible, bring yourself back to your breath. Take a big breath in, out through the mouth. There is a quote by William James, and they say, one of our greatest abilities is to choose one thought over another. And that's so true, like the ability of the mind and the power of the mind. We get to choose our thoughts. We get to choose what we dwell on. Nice. Beautiful. Let's walk the fingertips ever so slightly towards the front of the room, even further away from the body. Really start to open up through the armpits, the lats, letting the hips drop even more down towards the heels. And right, it might not look like this. You might be a little bit more up like this. That's okay. You can feel free to put a block underneath the legs or a pillow. We'll take 2 more breaths. Big breath in, big breath out. Big breath in, big breath out. Oh, Carver did a nice big stretch. All right, we're gonna slowly make our way into a tabletop pose. So bringing the knees underneath the hips, noticing that the feet are about hip width distance apart, spreading out through the hands here, and bringing the wrists directly underneath the shoulders. Beautiful. All right, we're just gonna take a couple little hip circles here. Circling the hips, nice and big. Yeah, just making these big hip circles. Maybe the circles start to come up into the spine here, like you start to push your spine out towards the ceiling and let it drop. Nice, we're just gonna keep circling here, starting to awake our spine. Moving it in directions that it not always moves. We'll take the circles to the opposite side now. Nice. Our greatest ability in life is that we can choose one thought over another. So if you're choosing a thought here, make it a good one. Like congratulate yourself for making it to your mat. Beautiful. All right, I'm gonna change my orientation on my mat. Stay in your tabletop pose. From here, we're gonna kick the right leg out to the right side of the room. Trying to bring all 4 corners of the foot on earth, the big toe mound, the pinky toe mound, both sides of the heels. Trying to keep the hips nice and square here and stack directly over where the knees would be if we were in a tabletop pose. Bringing the hands underneath the shoulders here. That back foot can be tucked under if you would like, or you can come up onto the top of your foot. From here, we're just gonna sink back towards our heel and then slowly come back up. Inhale, sink back towards the heel and slowly come up. We're just starting to lubricate the hip joints. We're lubricating this knee joint. We're just finding a little bit of motion here. We'll do it 2 more times. Nice. Last time, we're gonna sink down, and then we're gonna round through the spine here and come all the way back up. We're gonna take a couple of cat and cows with our leg extended out to the side. So on our inhale, dropping the belly, taking the gaze up. And exhale, push through the hands, round through the spine, take your gaze to that knee underneath you. Inhale, drop the belly, pull the chest forward, take the gaze up. Exhale, curl everything in. One more time. Nice. All right, keeping the right hand underneath the right shoulder. We're gonna inhale, reach the left arm all the way up, finding a big open twist here. Beautiful. All right, from here, we're gonna take that top hand and we're gonna thread it underneath this right arm here, reaching for that extended leg. We're not gonna set it down or anything, we're just reaching. Big breath in, and exhale, lift the arm back up. 3 more times, just reaching. Starting to open up through the shoulders. Trying to keep this standing arm nice and engaged here. Keeping that foot plugged into the earth. One more time, open all the way back up. And then set that arm down. We'll bring that foot back in, coming into tabletop. Take a cat and cow here. Nice, so I did turn my hat around, so I will tell you, if you see my black eye, don't worry, I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I just got kneed in the face, no big deal. Nice, all right, we're gonna take our left leg out to the left side of the room. Trying to find a place where all 4 corners of the foot can be on the earth here. Now, if it's not happening for you, no big deal. Just one side is on the earth here. Just energetically try to push that outer edge down. It may not reach, and that's okay. You can roll your yoga mat under, bring a little book underneath your foot, a rag underneath your foot, or you can just practice energetically drawing that foot down towards the earth. Nice. We're just going to start to sink back towards our heels and come all the way back up. Yeah, just like that. Sinking back. Coming back up, nice and slow, noticing any sensations here. Noticing where our thoughts go here. Yeah, one more time. And come all the way back up. Keeping this left hand underneath the left shoulder, still plugging into that left foot. We'll inhale, reach the right arm all the way up. And then exhale, we're gonna thread it through the window of this arm and this leg as we reach for the foot. Inhale all the way back up, and exhale, reach. 2 more times, moving with your breath, finding the sensations, choosing not to judge. Nice, last time, and come all the way back up, big breath in, take the gaze up, and exhale, hand down, knee down. Nice, we're gonna take a couple more circles with the hips. Maybe this time integrating the spine into it, spreading out through the hands here, taking the gaze down. 1 more circle to the side and switch directions, going the opposite way. Now, don't care about how silly you look or what you look like right here. Just find a sensation in your body. Nice. All right, coming to a nice neutral spine here. So oftentimes we tend to let our belly drop, right? And we make this kind of dipping shape. So pushing through the hands, we're gonna start to pull the belly button in and up here and start to create this long line of our spine here. Gaze down between the hands, big breath in, big breath out. All right, we're gonna get into a little wrist stretch. So we're gonna swing our right fingertips off the right side of the mat and swing our left fingertips off to the left side of the mat. Keeping the wrist underneath the shoulders here, we're just gonna gently sway from right to left. Starting to open up through all those stabilizer muscles, stabilizer tendons, ligaments in the hands and the wrists. Yeah, taking some time to do some yoga for our hands, right? Who would have thought? Beautiful. You can continue to rock back and forth like this. Or if it serves you, you can start to turn the fingers a little closer to the body. Yeah, just whatever works for you. This is your yoga, your journey. Taking 2 more breaths here. Nice. And then turning the fingertips back to 12 o'clock. We're gonna walk the knees 1 knee print behind where they were. We're gonna slowly bring our feet up towards the ceiling here so our knees are just in the mat. Nice, we're gonna move into knees, chest, chin. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna inhale here and start to bend through the elbows here, dropping the chest, dropping the chin down towards the mat. Big breath in, and then slowly come all the way down to the mat. Keeping the hands underneath the shoulders, we're gonna come up into an upward facing dog variation. So keeping a nice bend in the elbows as we hug them towards the waist here. Letting the legs extend out behind us and maybe pushing through the hands here as you start to lift the gaze and the chest up towards the wall in front of you. Big breath in, big breath out. Beautiful. We'll slowly come back up into a tabletop. Bringing our hands back underneath our shoulders, our knees underneath our hips. All right, from here, we're gonna tuck our toes under. So if I had like a camera crew, I would say zoom into my feet here. We're gonna slowly start to sink our hips down onto our feet. We're coming into a little pose called screaming toe pose. So it can be quite intense. So if you feel a sensation of more than 6 or 7 on a scale of 10, then please take a break and sit back up. Otherwise, we're checking in with all 10 toes and kind of making sure the little pads of the toes are down underneath us. Now, we're starting to open up through the fascia and the myofascia, the connective tissue in our feet. So this can be quite intense. So to distract ourselves, we're just gonna bring the hands out in front of us, palms face down, hands slightly beneath the shoulders. We're just gonna close the hands into fists. And because it's motorcycle season, we're gonna pretend that we're revving our motorcycle, just bringing our knuckles up and then down, up and then down, up and then down, and then start to rev your motorcycle even faster. Nice. And then even faster. And then rev your motorcycle as fast as you can for 3, for 2, for 1. Gently bring the hands down onto the mat underneath the shoulders and gently tap the toes underneath you. Releasing any of that tension. Nice. All right, we're gonna do that 1 more time. Tucking the toes under here, checking in with all 10 toes as we sit our hips back down onto our heels. Remember, you can always take a break here by coming back up. This time we're just gonna flip our hands up towards the ceiling as if we're pushing our hands against each other, giving each other like high fives. Finding this flex here as if we're like pulling the fingers back towards the face. Spreading out through the fingers here and breathing in for 3, for 2, for 1. Bring the hands down, untuck the toes, and gently tap them underneath you. All right, beautiful. All right, we're just gonna come onto our knees this time. Your knees can be out wide, they can be underneath you. You can bring a block underneath you. You can bring a pillow underneath you. Just finding a nice long spine. You know, if this is a little tight for your knees or your ankles, you can feel free to always just come into a seat here. We're just gonna take a couple little shoulder rolls. So on our next inhale, dropping our hands alongside of us, we're gonna shrug the shoulders up towards the ears and exhale, roll them down and back. Inhale, shrug the shoulders up towards the ears. Exhale, down and back. 3 more times. Nice. Last time. Beautiful. We're gonna bring the hands out in front of us. If you came onto your bum, just gently come back onto your knees. We're gonna bring our toes to touch in the back of the mat here and our knees out wide. Tucking our toes under, zoom into my feet here, like we were in our screaming toe pose. We're just gonna come into a little froggy. So bringing the hands underneath the shoulders, we're gonna start to come up onto the toes. Maybe the feet can kind of touch towards one another. Maybe this is kind of more where you look like. You know, maybe you're still working on it and you're just right here. That's fine. Bringing the hands down and starting to find length in the spine here as we drop the chin in towards the chest. So one of my old best friends, he always used to tell me, you move towards what you dwell. And I don't know if that's like a quote by a famous person or something, but it's something that I always say to myself, right? Our thoughts are so important, and our thoughts literally dictate what we do. So keeping your chin tucked in, lengthening through the arms here, we'll find 3 more breaths. Try to examine your thoughts here and see what they are, right? If our thoughts dictate our life, then we want to be careful of our thoughts we choose. 1 more big breath. And slowly bring the knees down onto the earth, coming back into our tabletop pose. Maybe it feels good to take a cat and cow. Maybe not. All right. So from here, we're going to bring the hands 1 handprint in front of where they were. So they're a little bit further away from the body. Tucking the toes under here, we'll take a big breath in. And on our exhale, we're going to move into our first downward facing dog. Yeah, spreading out through the hands here, straightening through the legs. Not worried about if our heels touch the ground. If they do, that's great. But if they don't, that's great. Letting the head start to drop down between the arms here. And we'll all just shake our head yes a few times. Yes to choosing positivity and thoughts that serve us. Then we're going to shake our head no a few times. No to negative thoughts. No to the inner critic. No to letting that dictate our life. Nice. We're just going to start to pedal out through the feet here, bending 1 knee at a time, coming up onto the toes, and just kind of like walking out our dog. Maybe it feels good to step the feet out almost as wide as your mat and shake your hips side to side. Maybe it feels good just to pedal your feet, lifting the hips up and back here as if you had a little string wrapped around you where your butt was, and I'm like hoisting it up. Nice. We'll take 2 more big breaths here. Letting our gaze come down between our knees towards the back of the room. 1 more big breath. And exhale, come back down onto our knees. Lift the feet up here. And we're going to come back into knees, chest, chin. Bending through the elbows, dropping the chest, dropping the chin down to the mat. And then slowly coming all the way onto our belly as we come up into a little baby cobra or an upward dog variation. Bringing the elbows towards the body, spreading out through the hands. Starting to lift the back of the skull towards the back of the room. Big breath in. And exhale, find a child's pose. Sinking the hips back towards the heels. Letting the forehead rest down on a block or onto the mat. Noticing maybe here how this pose has changed a little bit from the first time we did it. Yeah, beautiful. Just finding length somewhere here. Finding if there's any gripping or opening that you can like surrender into. I'm sorry, any gripping or tension you can let go of. Yeah, we don't want to surrender into the gripping. We just want to start to breathe into anything we're holding on and become aware of it so that we can start to let it go. 1 more big breath here. We're going to slowly come back up into our tabletop. Tuck the toes under, lift the hips up and back. Downward facing dog. Pedaling out the knees here, coming up onto the toes, dropping the heels down. Yeah, maybe shaking the head a few times. Starting to find the shoulders a little active here as we straighten through the arms, keeping a slight micro bend. And start to shrug the shoulders on the back body. Nice. All right. So we're going to come into a little 3-legged dog. And if you feel like you don't want to take this, don't take it. But otherwise, we're going to plug down through our hands and our left foot. On our next inhale, we're going to hover the right foot up off the mat. And from here, we're just going to lift that leg up, keeping the toes pointed down. Now, we're not worried about how high we can lift it, but rather keeping that foot nice and flexed, keeping that leg engaged. Then we're just gonna shake that leg out. Just shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it. Yeah, just do nothing but shake it here. Beautiful. One more big breath. And then set that foot down. Let's take it to the other side, replanting down into our hands. Starting to lift the left foot up off the earth and then slicing that heel up towards the ceiling, flexing the toes down. Nice. Finding the engagement in the hands and that standing leg. And then we're just gonna shake that leg out. Shaking it like a Polaroid picture. Letting the leg know we're gonna do some work here. Nice. One more big breath. And then set that foot down. Nice. We're gonna come down onto our hands and our knees. Big breath in. Big breath out. All right, we're gonna bring our right foot in between our hands. So maybe you just step it up here. Maybe you kind of assist it here, bringing it to the top of the mat. Bringing that knee right directly over the ankle here. And then we're gonna just come into a little low lunge. So we're gonna pick up the back toes here, scoot that back knee ever so slightly more behind us so we have this diagonal in our back leg. And we're gonna slowly walk our hands up onto our thigh. Yeah, just like that. Nice. So noticing here that this front knee is pushing towards the front of the room. You can even start to come over the toes if that feels good. Starting to pull this right hip crease towards the back of the room so the hips are nice in line with one another. Starting to open up through this left psoas here. This big muscle that goes in our hips, up through the hip joint and into our lower back. It kind of like weaves into us. So if you feel any sensation here, great. I hope you feel sensation here. But if you feel any pinching or pain, back off, maybe by coming down onto the hands here, maybe bringing blocks underneath the hands. If this back knee is a little sore, you can always curl your mat under here and create a little bit more cushion. Nice. Let's find 2 more big breaths here in this low lunge variation, whatever that looks like for you. Maybe you take your arms up, your gaze up. Maybe your hands at heart center. One more big breath. We're gonna bring our left hand down, parallel to our right heel here. So keeping about like a foot of space between that hand and the heel. We're gonna lift the right arm up. We're just gonna start to circle that arm towards the back of the room. Drawing this front knee towards the front elbow, start to find a little midline engagement, and then switch the sides of the circle. Nice, beautiful. One more big circle here. Bring that arm all the way up, take the gaze up. Maybe you start to let those knuckles drop down behind you on the left side. And then we'll bring the arm all the way down, framing the front foot. And we're just gonna come back into a tabletop pose. Taking a cat and cow here. Big breath in. Big breath out. A few more cat and cows. Oh, Carver's breathing along with us. Nice. All right, we're gonna take that to the second side. Maybe helping ourselves to bring that left foot between our hands here. Finding this front knee over the front ankle. Finding all 4 corners of the front foot planted in. Big toe mound, pinky toe mound, both sides of the foot. We're gonna come up onto the back toes here. You see how this hip is over the knee. We're gonna make more of a diagonal. So we're gonna scooch that foot a little bit more behind us and then set that knee down. Of course, you can always curl your mat under here. You can bring something up underneath this knee, like a book or a block, to bring the ground up to you if you would like. You can stay here if you would like, starting to pull this left hip crease back, or maybe you walk your hands up onto your thigh. Starting to draw that front knee towards the front of the room. Starting to lengthen the tailbone down here. Starting to find the hips and the shoulders square, maybe. Nice, yeah. Starting to open up through this right psoas. Big breath in, big breath out. Maybe you take your hands up, heart center. They say in the morning, you should choose your thoughts like you choose your clothes, right? Being intentional with what you put on and being intentional with what you think about, right? It's kind of like if you eat junk food all the time, like, yeah, it's delicious, but You're filling your body up with maybe stuff that isn't so great for you. And that's just like our thoughts. If we're thinking about like toxic negative things, or if we're ruminating on these thoughts that don't serve us, like our anxiety or something we should have said or should have done, like that's not going to help us. So choosing a nice positive thought to think here, maybe like, heck yeah, we're doing some yoga. Congratulations. Beautiful. We'll find one more big breath here. Bring the hands down and come back into our tabletop. Nice. Take a couple little hip circles here. Beautiful. All right, we're gonna come onto our bum here just for a few postures. So we're gonna bring the legs out to a little V here. Now this V can be as big or as small as you would like it. Maybe this is what it looks like today, creating a little V. Maybe it's a little bit wider. So wherever you're at, finding the heels planted into the earth and starting to find this external rotation in the hips by flexing the toes up towards the ceiling. Finding the sit bones rooted in the earth and starting to find length in the spine here. Yeah, drawing the crown of the head up. Nice. We're gonna hang out here for a few breaths. So maybe this is where you hang out here today, just a nice long spine. Maybe you start to walk the fingertips forward and start to drop the chin and the belly down towards the earth, keeping a long spine. Maybe it feels good to start to tuck the chin here and find a little round in the spine here. So wherever you're at, we're just coming into a little wide-legged forward fold, listening to your body and taking it where you need. Finding at least a sensation of 5 out of 10 on a scale of sensation. But if you feel any pinching or pain, back off. It might feel nice to bring a pillow underneath the hands or a block or some books. If you have a dog, you can kind of scooch underneath you and you like want to pet him. If only Carver was like right here, I would do that. Nice. So finding a few more breaths here. We are the product of our thinking, right? So it's important to choose carefully where we focus our mental energy, right? Like I kind of just said that, but that's a quote I have written down that I really liked because, right, it's so true. The power of the mind is it's so powerful, right? So just choosing carefully where we focus, what we focus on. Nice. One more big breath here. And slowly set all the way back up. We're going to draw the legs towards one another. We're just going to popcorn the legs out. Bringing the hands alongside of you, popcorning the knees up and down. Then we're going to flex the toes up towards the face and then point them. Flex and then point them. Nice. We're going to do 2 things at once. We're going to try to teach our brain something. So as we're pointing and flexing our toes, we're just going to drop our chin towards our chest. From here, we're going to semicircle our right ear towards our right shoulder. Still pointing and flexing the toes, and then left ear to left shoulder. Just starting to make these little semicircles with the neck. Still keeping a nice long spine. I say to remind myself. Try a few more breaths here. Yeah, nothing fancy, just finding this like sciatica flossing, starting to open up through the neck and hanging out here for 3, 2, 1. All right, bringing the feet in towards the body on the right or left side, and we'll make our way back into a tabletop. Tucking the toes under, lifting the hips up and back, downward facing dog. Notice here, maybe how your down dog has changed a little bit after opening up through the hamstrings a little bit more. Spreading out through the hands and coming up onto your toes if you're not there already. We're just going to start to walk the toes towards the hands. Taking as many or as few steps as you would like here. And coming into a forward fold on your mat. So your feet can be about hip width distance. You can bring your legs out wider if you would like. You can start to find a bend in your legs here to start to open up through your lower back. You can bring your hands down to the mat or grab opposite elbows here. If it serves you to interlace the fingers behind the head and add some weight to the head, then do that. Beautiful. We'll just find a few breaths here. Maybe it feels good to find a little traction by bouncing or swaying. Finding all four corners of the feet on the mat here. And hanging out here for 3, for 2, for 1. Bringing yourself to the top of the mat if you're not there already. Bringing our hands right underneath the knees here. So the fingers are pointed down and the hands are on the shins. On our next inhale, we're gonna start to lift the crown of the head towards the front of the room as we reach our sit bones to the back. Creating a little shelf with our spine here and starting to push the hands into the shins so you can lift the body up. Starting to draw the shoulder blades together on the back body. Big breath in and fold. Maybe this time the legs are a little bit more straight. Starting to work into those hammies a little bit. Nice. We'll find one more big breath here. And then planting down through the feet, we'll slowly roll all the way up. Coming to a standing pose. Reaching the arms up when you get there. Moving my camera so you can see. And taking the gaze up if that serves you. So finding the feet underneath the body, finding a little bend in the knees. Big breath in. And big breath out, bring the hands to heart center. Whew. All right, so from here, we're just gonna move into a little chair. So keeping our feet about hip width distance apart, we're gonna start to sink our hips down here as if we're sitting in a little chair. My niece loves to have tea parties, so we're pretending we're gonna sit down in a little chair here. Keeping the tailbone rooted down, so see how my spine is nice and long here. I'm starting to energetically pull the legs in towards center and push the hands into center. Can you sink a little lower, just yes or no? Keeping about a majority of the weight in the heels here, so if you wanted to, you could lift up all 10 toes. Big breath in, big breath out. Can you sink a little lower, just yes or no? Starting to stabilize the ankles, the feet here, the Achilles, big breath in, and stand all the way up. Reach the arms up, take the gaze up. Get big here, take up space. And exhale, forward fold at the top of your mat. Dropping the head, taking the gaze between your thighs, here your knees. Big breath in, big breath out. One more time, big breath in. Big breath out. All right, bringing your hands down onto the mat, bending your knees as much as you need to get there. We're gonna step the left foot all the way to the back of the mat here. Pivoting the left toes out to the left side of the room here. So all four corners of the feet are planted in. When we're ready, you have this right leg at 12 o'clock here, the knee over the ankle here. We're gonna slowly stand up, coming into our first warrior. So finding this can be really intense in the hips here. So we're not trying to turn our belly button towards the front of the room, but instead we're just trying to start to pull this right hip crease ever so slightly back so we can start to spiral the left ribs forward. Now checking in with that front knee and bending it over the front ankle, we're gonna bring our hands to heart center. Now if this feels good for you and you can feel the back edge of that back foot planted into the mat, you can start to feel the engagement in your legs. Maybe you lift the arms up, just maybe. Maybe you keep them at heart center. Find what works for you. Big breath in here, wherever you're at, drawing that front knee forward. And exhale. All right, we're gonna move into warrior 2. So the biggest differentiation, what did I just say? The biggest difference between warrior 1 and warrior 2 is the placement of the hips. So as you can feel in this warrior 1, like our hips are really active. We're trying to pull this right hip crease back. As we bring our arms out to the front and the back of the room, we're gonna start to open up this left hip so our pelvis becomes nice and neutral. Yeah, the belly button is like kind of pointing either towards the left side of the room or the left corner of the mat. We're starting to open up, starting with the sternum, starting in through the shoulders, reaching the fingertips away from the body as we draw that front knee forward. Still plugging into that back foot here. Big breath in, big breath out. One more time, big breath in. And we're gonna cartwheel the hands down, pivot on the back toe, and we're just gonna try and step that back foot to meet the front, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Bring the hands down onto the mat here. Bending the knees as much as we need to. We're gonna step the right foot all the way to the back of the mat here, pivoting the toes out to the right side. Now, making sure we're taking up like a lot of room on our mat, like at least 4 feet. I mean, if you're a little bit shorter, then that will be different. Or if you're taller, that's going to be different. But at least taking up, like if you were to bring your arms out side to side, like at least taking up, so your arms are like almost in a, not like a straight line, but like wider than a wide-legged forward fold. Just bringing the arms out. Nice. All right, keeping that front knee over the front ankle here, we're gonna move into our warrior one. Slowly drawing the shoulders up over the hips, drawing that front knee forward, and then ever so slightly tugging this left hip crease back. Yeah, so my belly button's kind of pointing to like the right corner of my mat. A lot of cues in yoga, they'll tell you to actually turn it all the way to the front of the room, but that's really rough on our hip here. So finding the sensation that works for you just by engaging this left hip crease and ever so slightly pulling it back. Nice. All right. You can keep the hands at heart center. You can lift the arms up. And if you lift the arms up here, let the hands be an extension of energy. Let the fingertips open. Drop the shoulders away from the ears. Big breath in. And we're going to move into our warrior two. Bringing our belly button over to face the right side of the mat here. Bringing the arms out to a T from the front and the back of the room. We're going to bring our gaze over the left fingertips here. And slightly drop the hands a little bit below the shoulders. Drawing that front knee forward. Big breath in. Big breath out. One more time, big breath in. Big breath out. All right, we're gonna bring both hands down to frame the front foot, pivoting on the back toes. We're gonna set that back knee down. Now, we forgot to do this on the other side, so I just wanna make sure we're balanced in the body. We're gonna lift the left hand up here, coming into revolve side angle. Stacking the shoulders and then just gently circling the arm to one side. Drawing that front elbow towards the front knee, and then switch sides of your circle. Big breath in, and big breath out. Bring both hands down. We'll come back into a tabletop pose. Taking whatever feels good here, maybe a couple of cat and cows, maybe some sassy little hip circles. Nice, beautiful. Finding 2 more breaths wherever you're at. And then tucking the toes under, lifting the hips up and back, downward facing dog. Our last down dog of this class. Pushing through the hands, dropping the head here, letting the heels energetically sink down towards the mat. They don't have to touch, but just energetically pushing them down. Nice. Coming up onto the toes, we're gonna walk our feet to meet our hands, coming into a forward fold one more time. This time grabbing opposite elbows. And swaying side to side. Nice. Release the hands down and we'll slowly roll the way up. All right, we're just gonna take a standing posture just for a little equanimity, a little balance in our body. So if you wanna come to a wall, feel free to set a hand on the wall. If you have a chair out in front of you, feel free to grab onto that. Nice. All right. So planting down into our left foot, we're going to slowly come up onto our right toes. Our feet are about hip width distance apart. Our shoulders are stacked over our hips, stacked over our ankles. From here, bringing our hands on our hips, we're just going to start to bend the right knee up towards the front of the room here. Bringing the knee in line with the hip, and then like plugging it in the hip socket. Straightening up and flexing through the right standing toes. Beautiful. All right, we're just gonna add a little bit of movement here. We're gonna drop the toes down to touch the ground and then come back up. Drop the toes down to touch the ground, come back up. If you're at the wall and you're holding onto the wall, this is what it looks like. You know, maybe your knee doesn't go that high today. That's okay. Maybe you're just slightly lifting the toes, flexing them when you get up off the earth, and then bringing it down. We'll find 2 more here. And last one, we're gonna hold here, lengthening the tailbone down, growing the crown of the head up here. Big breath in for 3, 2, 1. Set that foot down, kind of move the hips around, do a little dance, get down tonight. Yeah, like just work that out a little bit. Nice, we're gonna bring this to the second side. So finding our shoulders stacked over our hips, over our ankles here. Slight bend in our knees, right? So we don't want to lock out any joints. Bringing our weight into our right foot, slowly coming up onto the left toes. We'll bring the hands on the hips, or if it serves you to bring them alongside you, you can. If you want to reach them up, you can. When you're ready, slowly starting to bend through that knee. Maybe it comes in line with this hip here and you plug it in here. See how I like moved and my posture went from like hunching over to straight? If it's not, if your knee can't go that high, that's okay. Just lifting that foot up off the earth and lengthening the tailbone down. Nice, we'll find a couple little movements here. Inhale, lifting that knee up. Exhale, touch it down. Lift, touch. 3 more. Lift, touch. Lift, touch. Last one, we're gonna hold here for 3, for 2, 1. Inhale, drop the foot down, reach the arms up. And exhale, bring the hands alongside of you. We're just gonna make our way onto our bum here. So coming down onto your mat, however you want to. Beautiful. We're gonna bring the arms out towards the front of the room, finding all 4 corners of the feet planted into the earth. The feet are about hip width distance apart. We're gonna start to lean back here. Starting to engage the trunk. We're just gonna start to lean. And we're gonna slowly come all the way down to your mat. Now if you need to grab onto your legs, that's cool. Just slowly come all the way down. Ah, nice. All right, coming onto our backs here. Finding our feet about hip width distance, toes at 12 o'clock. Finding our knees point up to the ceiling here. And reaching our arms out long alongside the hips, palms face down. Feeling the spine nice and long here. We're gonna take a big breath in and a big breath out. Plugging down into all 4 corners of the feet, big breath in. And on our exhale, we're gonna start to lift the hips up, coming into a bridge pose. Now today, maybe your hips just lift off the mat where you can still feel the mat underneath you, still a bridge. Maybe your hips come really up high, still a bridge. Maybe you grab for the sides of your sticky mat to help lift yourself up, still a bridge. Maybe you interlace the fingers underneath you and come up onto your shoulders so you can lift your hips up higher, still a bridge. Hanging out in whatever variation you're in for 3, for 2, for 1, coming all the way down onto the mat. Bringing the knees out wide, the soles of the feet touching here, coming into Supta Baddha Konasana. Reaching the arms out to little cactus arms alongside of you to open up through the shoulders. Nice. Noticing if you need to draw the feet closer in towards the body for sensation, or let off a little, release a little by pushing them away. Nice. We'll hang out here for 2 more breaths. Then bringing our hands to the outer edges of our knees. We're going to slowly close our knees like our most favorite book. Let me know in the comments below what books you're reading if you would like. I always need new recommendations. All right, so finding the lower part of our back plugged into the earth here. Bringing the hands alongside the hips. We're going to inhale, draw the knees up towards the chest, and then straighten through the legs. Flexing the toes down towards the nose, and the legs can be as bent as you need them here, right? We tend to get really tight on our hamstrings. So just finding the feet up over the hips. This is technically an inversion here. Now, if you're close to a wall or a chair, maybe you kind of turn your hips and take a supported bridge or supported legs up the wall. So the choice is yours. But just getting our legs over our heart here. So all of this that's usually pushed down by gravity has a chance to come into our stomach and renew. Nice. All right, we'll find 2 more breaths just like this. And then we're gonna add on. Maybe you start to notice the wobbling of the legs. That's all right, it's just the body. Listen to what your thoughts are saying, not the inner critic. Choose what you think here. Maybe choose like, I'm strong, look what I'm doing. Nice. All right, we're gonna bring the fingertips up towards the toes here. We're just gonna crunch up and crunch and crunch. Now, if this is hard on the neck, you need to interlace the hands behind the head here. That's fine. Let's just crunch here for 3, for 2, for 1. Drop the knees into the chest. Give them a nice tight squeeze as you rock side to side. Oh, no. Can you lay down? Just rocking on the lower back here. We're gonna come into a happy baby, reaching for the outer edges of the ankles, the feet. Can't quite reach, you can reach onto your pant leg here. We're just drawing our knees down towards our ribs, down towards the ground, besides the ribs here. Maybe it feels good to rock side to side a few times. Maybe it feels good just to stay here. Finding the lower back, push into the earth, big breath in. Big breath out. We'll slowly release, bringing the hands around the knees. Coming into a little last posture here. On our next inhale, we're gonna draw the forehead up towards the knees. Then the exhale, drop the shoulders to the back of the skull down. 2 more times. Inhale, come up into little ball. Exhale down. 1 more time. And we're just gonna hold here for 3, for 2, for 1. We're gonna come into our final resting pose, our Savasana. So you can take your Savasana, just laying on the ground, letting the feet splay out right to left, nestling the shoulders underneath you. You can bring your feet up here or your knees up towards the ceiling and walk them to the outer edges of your mat and let them drop in here for restorative, like rest here, for constructive, kind of restorative posture. You can come back into your Supta Baddha Konasana, soles of the feet together, knees out wide. If it serves you to take this posture seated up against the wall, finding length in your spine, then do so. If it feels good to end our class the way we started it on our belly, then flip it onto your stomach, creating a little pillow for your head. So finding whatever posture you would like here. Closing the eyes or softening the gaze. We'll take a big breath in through the nose. Pause at the top of it. Exhale out through the mouth. 2 more times. Inhale. Pause. Out through the mouth. Last time. Inhale. Pause. Out through the mouth. Moving around however you need to make yourself 10% more comfortable. And then coming to this final posture of just rest here. And noticing here as we stop our movement, where our mind goes. This is often the hardest part of my practice, being still in my mind, because the inner critic starts to come up and start saying all the things I need to do or whatever. So every time you notice that inner critic start to talk, I invite you to notice and then bring your attention back to your breath. Letting our breath be the pathway into this present moment here on our mat. So I'll be quiet for the next minute and you can stay here as long as you need to. But I do encourage you to take this final posture. Gently begin to deepen your breath here. Bringing small movement into the hands, opening and closing them, moving the feet into circles here. Then we're just gonna come onto our right or our left side for a little fetal posture here. Pressing our head down onto our arm. Now, if it serves you to take anything from this practice with you off of your mat into your day, into your week, maybe by setting an intention to, be mindful of the inner critic, or, know that our thoughts have power, that we move towards what we dwell, then set an intention here. Pushing down into that top hand, we'll make our way up to nice, easy seats. Closing our practice by bringing our hands to our heart center. We'll take a big breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. One more time, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Thank you so much for showing up for yourself today, for creating space. Again, my name is Coco, and I do teach around Brighton and South Lyon. I teach everything from private yoga to group yoga to studio yoga to yoga for athletes or recovering from injuries. So if you have an interest in continuing your journey, feel free to continue watching these videos, or feel free to contact me at C as in Coco, K as in kite, EEHL at gmail.com. Thanks, Lori. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day.